good story in Second Kings chapter 5. So many lessons in this particular text. So many lessons in this text that you can learn from if you read this story carefully. And this story is about a man who almost missed his miracle. He almost missed his blessing. He almost missed what God wanted to do for him. And I want to look at this because so many people, if you're not careful, because of how God does a thing sometimes, and the way he does it might not be the way you want him to do it, could make you miss your miracle. Because God works unusual, in unusual ways. And sometimes he uses unusual things in order to bless us. Don't miss your miracle because you don't like how God's going to manifest your miracle. Don't miss your miracle because you don't like how God's going to perform your miracle. Don't miss your miracle because you don't like who God's going to use to bring your miracle to pass. When you read this text, it is about a servant girl or a slave. It is about Naaman. It is about the servants of Elisha, and it is about Elijah. It is about three rivers, one river in Israel and two rivers in Damascus. The Abana and the Pharpar in Damascus and the Jordan River in Israel. You're going to see a man, because of his arrogance, because of what he thinks about himself, because this man thinks he's special, he almost missed his miracle. If you look at this particular text, verse 13 is the text I want to build this sermon on because it is the verse that helped Naaman realize that he was almost about to miss his miracle. Naaman's servants went to him and said, "My father, if the prophet would have told you to do a great thing, would you have not done it? Much more then, when he tells you to wash and be cleansed." Man, I tell you, you better be careful because you could miss your miracle, miss your deliverance, miss your blessing because it's not packaged the way you want it to be packaged. You know, there's a song that says, "Any way you bless me, Lord, it'll be okay." I really wanted to look at this because so many people don't realize that you could be missing out on what God wants to do simply because you don't like the way God's going to do it. I really want to take this story apart and I want to look at the people that are in the story because the people that are in the story is the story. Let's look at Naaman and look at who he is. Verse 1 says that he was a commander of the army of Syria. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given him victory to Syria. He was a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. This great man who had success, he had prominence, he had recognition, and he had wealth, but he had a problem. The text says that he was a great man, a successful man. He had everything that you could desire and want, but he had a problem. He had leprosy. Verse 2 says this, that when the Syrians were in Israel, and when they had defeated Israel, they took captive a young slave girl. And they took this girl as a slave, or as a captive, and they gave the girl to Naaman's wife. She was a servant girl. That's the second person in the text I want to talk about. This girl was a servant of Naaman's wife. Naaman being a great man, a commander, a person of prominence, power, and success. But he was a leper. I could bring this point to you. He probably used some of his money and his wealth and his power to try to find a cure for leprosy, but he couldn't. Money or medicine could not solve his problem. And this young girl who was taken hostage or captive and now serves Naaman's wife knew that Naaman was a leper. And she said to her mistress, I know that Naaman, your husband, has leprosy. But there's a prophet in Israel. What the text says, in Samaria, who could cure him of his leprosy. I was studying this, and one author wanted me to tell you this. Don't you see how this servant girl who was taken captive by the Syrian army and Naaman, she wasn't bitter. Because if she was bitter, she never would have told her mistress that there was an answer to her husband's problem. And so Naaman's wife told him what this slave girl had said, and so there are the actions that are now going to take place. Because Naaman then goes to his master, which is the king of Syria, and tells him what the servant girl says. And the king of Syria says, go. But you ain't going to go empty-handed. And He says, I will send a letter to the king of Israel. And so Naaman left. I'm in verse 5. And he took 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothes. He took a whole lot of material possessions. I'm interested in knowing how much money that equates to today, and I studied it. And in modern terms, that would be about $3 million. He took $3 million with him to Israel seeking a cure for leprosy. And he took a letter from the king of Syria. But when they got to Israel, as soon as the king of Israel read the letter, verse 7, I'm in verse 7, he got scared because they had just been in a war with Syria and lost. And now the conflict was resolved. And the king of Israel tore his robe and said, am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life Naaman? He says, can I heal this man from leprosy? And you know what the king of Israel said? And I'm at the end of verse 7. He just trying to start some mess. I thought this was resolved between us. But now he done sent his servant Naaman and sent this letter here. And he says at the end of verse 7, see how he trying to pick a quarrel with me? Again? Verse 8. But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel tore his robe, he sent a message and said, why have you torn your robe? Have the man to come to me, that he may know that there's a prophet in Israel. I need to stop right here. This is what I wanted to tell him last week, but I didn't get a chance to do. That wherever God sends you there because God wants the people where he sent you to know that you belong to him. And that wherever a preacher is sent, God sends his power with it. The king of Israel was afraid, but Elisha wasn't afraid. If I had time, I'd explain to you. If you read 2 Kings chapter 4, he had just performed a miracle. And if you skip over to chapter 6, he's going to perform another miracle. Matter of fact, Elijah performed 8 miracles. And when Elijah was going up in that fiery chariot, Elisha said to him, give me a double portion. Elisha performed 16 miracles. And Elijah performed 8 miracles. And so Elisha was a miracle worker. God had already performed a miracle in chapter 4. And he's going to perform another miracle in chapter 6. If I had time, I'd explain to you that miracle in chapter 6 is really a show-enough miracle. Because in chapter 6, the prophets from the school of the prophets wanted to build a school. But they didn't have any equipment to build it with. I'm in chapter 6. I'm just trying to give you a little review. And so they had to borrow tools. And one of those prophets borrowed an axe. But the axe head wasn't that secure on the wood. And when he was building, he lost it in the water. And when he lost it, he panicked and went and told Elisha, my axe head fell off my axe. And I borrowed it. It wasn't mine. And then Elijah, being the prophet that he was, went to the place where he lost it, and an iron axe head. You know iron sinks. And Elijah performed a miracle that an iron axe head floated in water. Elisha had miracles, supernatural power. And so he said, send Naaman down to me so that he might know that there is a prophet in Israel. And so Naaman, verse 9, with his horses. You see the word horses is plural. This man had a whole entourage. Do you see the word chariots? It's plural, not singular. You know when it's S at the end. He had horses and chariots with a whole entourage. He stopped at the house of Elisha. Now, this is what really ticked him off. Verse 10, Michelle. Because he had these horses, chariots, he had a whole entourage. He made a big deal of himself. But when he got in front of Elijah's house, you know what verse 10 tells us? That Elijah didn't even come outside. Elijah stayed in the house. And verse 10 says Elijah sent his messenger. Now you know what Naaman was expecting, for Elijah to come outside and greet him. Yeah. Because Naaman thought he was a big deal. He thought he was somebody, because you remember in verse 1, the king of Syria thought that Naaman was a big deal. But Elijah didn't think he was that big of a deal. And so he didn't get the greeting he thought he should get. Elijah stayed in the house, kept on doing what he was going to do, and sent his messenger out there. And this is what the messenger told Naaman. Simple. Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed. Now, here's the problem. But Naaman went away mad. You'll miss your miracle being mad. Or if I had time, I'd explain to some of you. You know the reason why you are missing your blessing, missing your deliverance, missing your miracle is because you're always mad. You know why you're mad? Because people don't respond to you the way you think they ought to. He was mad because Elisha didn't greet him. He was mad because he didn't hear what he wanted to hear. But Naaman went away mad, saying, I thought for sure, listen to what this man said. Aaron, listen to what this man said. See, this is an issue when you think too much of yourself. I thought for sure that he should come out and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God. Wave his hand on the spot and cure me of my lepers. He wanted it to be, Brother Mills, a Benny Hinn healing crusade event. He wanted to be called up to the front. He wanted Benny Hinn to take off his coat and swing it over him and make a big deal and make a big scene. Man, this flows in the face of this new prosperity, apostles and prophets stuff that these folk call you up to the front and they try to make a big deal out of you. Want to lay hands on you. And see, that's what Naaman wanted. And because it didn't happen like that, he didn't think it was going to happen. Here's another lesson. Sometimes God don't make a big deal out of your miracle and your deliverance. Matter of fact, this is what he said. Now, these two rivers in Damascus, the Abon and the Pharpar, and the rivers in Damascus, he says they are better than all the waters. These two rivers, the Abon and the Pharpar river in Damascus, they're better than all. In other words, let me tell you something. These were clean waters, clean bodies of water. But you know the question I had to ask Robert, if the waters where you came from were so clean, why didn't you get in them and get healed while you were in Damascus? Let me tell you why he didn't want to get into the Jordan. Y'all want to know? He was told to go dip 7 times in the Jordan, but he talked about these 2 rivers in Damascus. He said the rivers in Damascus are cleaner than the river in Israel, which is the Jordan. The reason why the Jordan wasn't clean, because it was surrounded by peaks and mountains, and when the rainfall or the ice caps melted, the snow, the mud, and the soot would run down the mountains, and it would run into the river of Jordan, and the Jordan was a dirty river. It had mud and silt. You couldn't even see the waters in those rivers in Damascus was clear and clean. Dora, can I tell him why I told him over 30 Mile Island? Now, it don't make sense. You got on clothes this morning, don't you? And not all of us can afford to take our clothes to the cleaners. When you wash the clothes you have on, if they ain't new, when you put them in the washing machine, you wanted to make sure that the water was clean. Because clean water can clean dirty clothes. But not in this miracle. God used just the reverse. Because the clean waters were in Damascus, in the 2 rivers that Naaman mentioned. But he was told to go wash in dirty waters. Not 1 time, not 2 times, not even 3 times. But 7 times to dip down in dirty waters in order to be made clean. And that don't make sense, do it? You dirty with leprosy. Now, how you gonna want me to go get dirtier to get clean? Don't make sense, do it? You know why it don't make sense to you? Because you ain't doing the miracle. This is a divine miracle. You do know God has unusual ways that he does what he do. And listen, if it makes sense, it probably ain't God. Man, this dude could have told me to go back to Damascus. You just come from Damascus and you didn't get no results. And so he said, go dip 7 times in the Jordan. The Jordan was a dirty river. Couldn't even see the surface because of the silt in the mud. And Naaman thought so much of himself. He was clean now. Because, he came with chariots and horses, and he came with $3 million, and he had the best finest of linen with him. He was dressed to the nines. And he went down there to get a miracle, but he didn't like the prescription. Well, if I had time, I could nail a nail right here. Anybody ever went to the doctor and the doctor told you what to do to get better and prescribe to you the cure or the medicine? And see, sometimes the prescription or the medicine is worse than the disease or the sickness. Do I have any witnesses in here? See, y'all didn't grow up like I did. You remember castor oil? Woo! Wasn't it terrible to ingest? Terrible taste. Tasted terrible. And almost like the taste of the castor oil was worse than the sickness. And see, y'all was fancy because we couldn't afford castor oil. So what my granddaddy did, Mr. Sistron, see, ain't nobody gonna agree with this. We had what we call cow chip tea. See, y'all too fancy for that. Y'all could go down to the $1 store and get a bottle of castor oil. My granddaddy couldn't, and so he took cow chip tea. Let me tell you what cow chip tea, without being graphic, it was when a cow defecated and it sit out in the sun and it got hard. And then my grandfather would take it, boil it, strain it, and what was left after he strained it, we would drink it, TJ. Oh, y'all too fancy for that, ain't you? But I guarantee you, we didn't have to go to the doctor. And we got better. Because sometimes the prescription, what you got to do to get better, it might seem bad at first. And Naaman said, wait a minute. If you wanted me to dip in water, there were 2 clean lakes in Damascus where I left. Send me back there, and I'll dip in them. Then verse 13, I'm almost finished. Now listen, I'm going to tell you, it was a servant girl who was not at the level and had the social status of Naaman that got him to Jerusalem in the first place. And let me tell you this, my brothers and sisters, you got to be careful when you ignore people that ain't at your level. See, because this servant girl wasn't socially at Naaman's level. Naaman was a commander, a general in the Syrian army, and this was just a slave girl. And sometimes God wants to bless you, and the people he sent to bless you through, they ain't on your level. And you ignore people because they don't live in your neighborhood. Because they ain't got as much money as you got. They don't have the social influence and affluence that you have. They are beneath your social level. And sometimes God will send people to deliver your blessing to you and through them, and they ain't on your social level. You better quit ignoring that janitor on your job. You better quit ignoring that cousin that ain't got the car you got, the house you live in, and the money you have. That cousin might know more than what you know. Sometimes we think the only folk in our family that's got any sense is the folk who got money, status, and power. Sometimes it's the person who ain't got much that talk the most sense. Shoot, I don't call the folk in my family who got something when I'm in trouble. I call the folk who ain't got something. Because the folk who ain't got something, I tell you one thing they know how to do, Mr. Sistrom. They know how to pray. And they can get a prayer through. And that servant girl, she didn't have the status of a Naaman, but she got the answer. Now listen, verse 13. See, listen, quit ignoring people because they don't have the status and the influence and the money that you got. Because now here's two normal people of low status and stature finna say something to a man who got money and power. Notice this in the text. I want to do this a third man out if I didn't have time. Naaman's servants, plural again, took two up. Because sometimes some folks think they're so important, you can't deal with them by yourself. You got to get somebody to go with you. You can solve some of these issues with somebody in your family that think they so much. If you quit trying to go by yourself, find somebody else in the family. Because the text says servants. You see that? Plural, not one, but two. Maybe three. Maybe four. Matter of fact, they had come all the way from Damascus with Naaman, and they was dragging all them shekels of gold and them talents of silver and all of them 10 sets of clothes, and they was on them chariots, and they were hot and tired, and they said, we done came all the way from Damascus. And that man talking about going home. They said, wait a minute, hold up. Let's get together. Let's go to the master. I know you gonna say something. No, I ain't gonna say nothing. You gonna say something? I'll say something. Shoot, I'm tired. I'm tired of dealing with this. So they went to the master. Look what the text says. And Naaman's servants went to him and said, now wait a minute, master. They put that term of respect. They said, Father. They were scared. So they flattered him. And see, in order to deal with some folk, because they think they so much, you got to say some flattering things to them. You got to butter them up for them to listen to you. Because see, I probably wouldn't have said that. I would have said, Carolyn here, I can't say what I want to say. So you got to butter him up. Got to make him feel good about himself. He already thought so much of himself. And so the servant said, Father, if the prophet would have told you to do something great, you would have done that because you think you're great. He just told you to do something simple. And the Jordan just right there. The Jordan right yonder. It's right over there. And all he told you to do is go wash and be clean. I'm just teaching this lesson. I'm almost finished. Sometimes you need some people around you to talk some sense into you. Don't dismiss everybody. You need some common sense people around you, TJ, to talk some common sense into you. Well, I love my grandchildren. Sometimes they can say some of the most profound things to Papa. Took them out to eat one time, and I was raising Cain. They didn't get my order right. about ready to turn over the table, cuss out the waitress. And my grandson said, Papa, it don't take all that. I almost snapped. And I said, baby, you right. Ain't it the truth what I'm saying? Because sometimes it is the most common norm. People with common sense to sometimes talk sense into you. And they said, Master, now wait a minute. We done come way down here and you act like we finna go, and he just told you to do something. Jordan right over there. We here. He told you how to get your healing. Just go down there and wash and be clean. And so verse 14, I'm almost finished. So he went, dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, as the man of God told him, and his flesh was restored. I see some of y'all women are like this, because this dirty water was kind of like the fountain of youth. Because this old man Naaman, who was weathered by leprosy, weathered by time, the text says he became clean like a young man. Simply because he listened to somebody coming, talk some common sense into him. And so he got the results. And then Naaman and all of his attendants went back to the man of God. Now listen, and Dora and Miss Jefferson, Michael can testify that when I got to this part, they started shouting. And they started shouting. I'm going to see if y'all going to shout. He went back to the preacher house. And see, probably the reason why you can't shout because you don't like the preacher. See, they didn't know me enough not to like me. But look what the text says. He went back to the preacher house and stood before him and said, now I know that there's no God in Israel. There's no God in the world. There's no God like the God that is in Israel. Now I know that there is no God in all the world. The translation I have says, except in Israel. And I really wanted to kind of, I'm going to throw this in right here. Listen, sometimes you have to prove God. And God don't mind you proving him and putting him to the test. And so Naaman put God to the test at the advice of his common sense servants. And now he says, now I know. There ain't no God in all the world except in Israel. And so I'm closing now. He said, now, so let me give you a little money. I brought $3 million with me. So accept a gift from your servant. Now, I know this ain't the modern preacher. Because now, in these days, they want to give before they pray for you. They want to give before they anoint you. In other words, you send a seed in, and they'll send you some miracle spring water and a prayer cloth. And then they'll pray, Beverly, for your miracle. But Elijah wasn't that kind of preacher. Because even after he healed him and Naaman got the results he was looking for, Naaman said, let me give you some of this money I brought, some of these gifts, some of this shekels and this talents of silver and shekels of gold and some of these 10 garments. Let me give you some. See, I'm going to tell you, I'm closing. This wasn't no hooping sermon. I won't go hoop it Thursday night. I'm not going to hoop today. But let me tell you something. What God has is not for sale. I know we have commoditized religion in the modern age, but let me tell you, the blessings of God, the miracles of God, the deliverance of God is not for sale. You can't buy it, it ain't for sale. I don't care how these false prophets have flipped religion over for people to believe that you can buy the blessings of God. You can't buy the blessings of God. The prophet said in verse 16, as surely as the Lord lives, to whom I serve, I will not accept what? A thing from you. That ain't like these modern preachers. Shoot, they want everything. They want a seed and an offering. And even though Naaman urged him, and now and this is probably the picture, one picture, Naaman said, y'all take it off chairs anyway and leave. And Elisha said, put it back on there, I don't want it. Urged him, that's what the word urge means. He said, no, I ain't going down like this. And I'm going to close with this now because I'm closing. Because there's always one that's all about them Benjamins. Because Elijah had a servant named Gehazi, whatever, however you want to pronounce it. He was one of the servants. He served his master Elijah. He was one of the prophets, one of the helpers of Elisha. He said, wait a minute. Man, some folks, if they see money, they just don't know how to act. I ain't got time to really unpack it because I got to close because it's 9:30. But let me explain this to you. Man, some folk you just can't. He just could not. Man, $3 million, shekels of gold, talents of silver, and 10 sets of the finest fabric made into garments. Gehazi. Or Gehazi. As a matter of fact, Elisha told him to go in peace. And after Naaman, I'm in verse 19, after Naaman had traveled some distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said to him, he made a mistake right there, started talking to himself. Said to himself, my master is too easy. Wait a minute, my master is too easy. He done gave this rich man back his health. This rich man tried to give him money by not accepting from him what he brought. As the Lord liveth, he said, I'm surely going to run after him and get something. Am I making that up as in the text? He said, I'm going to run. As the Lord liveth, he ain't getting out of here without paying an offering. I will run after him and I'm getting something from him. And so he ran after Naaman. And Naaman saw him running toward him. He got down from the chair and said, is everything all right? Yeah, everything all right. He must have been a brother. My master sent me. He lied right there. He lied to get money. See, when you got to lie to get money, that's the wrong way to get it. My master sent me and said, two young men from the company of the prophets have just come to me from the hills of Ephraim and Israel, and please give them the talents of silver and 2 sets of clothes. By all means, says Naaman. He don't know no better. Take it. And I got to close, but now here where the mess started. I ain't got time closing. Now this fella Gehazi, I go back and he act like he ain't done that. But see, sometimes what you do in the dark will come to the light. Because he went back there to the house of Elijah and act like he had done nothing. But the Lord told Elijah before Gehazi ever got back. Elijah said, man, where you been? Oh, I ain't been nowhere. Well, this is one-line servant, one-line preacher, one-line prophet. Elijah said, now quit lying. You know where you been, and you know exactly what you did. You know exactly what you did. And then I'm closing, Butch, because I'm going to explain this to you. You got to be careful when you get what you got and you don't get it right. See, that's why I'm scared to get anything wrong, because, listen, there's a price to pay. Now, I ain't perfect because, listen, a guy was teaching this week in the Congress, and he pushed it a little too far because he says, if you steal a pen from your office, you have broke one of the 10 commandments. I said to myself, man, I done broke a whole lot of 10 commandments because I done got a lot of towels from hotel rooms. Ain't it the truth? Well, I ain't the only one up in here. And so this guy, you got to be careful because he stole and he got ill-gotten gain and he lied to get it. And so this is what Elijah said, and I'm closing. I ain't got no dramatic. I ain't going to do nothing big. I ain't going to shout. I ain't going to try to hoop. I'm just going to explain to you what happened. The leprosy that came off of Naaman, Gehazi got leprosy. Got to be careful. See, these Bible stories don't scare you, but they scare me. If I was Gehazi, I'd be just like Zacchaeus. You remember he was up in that tree, and when Jesus said, come down, and he invited Jesus to his house, and when he was having dinner with Jesus, he said, Jesus, I've been ripping folk off. I ripped a whole lot of folk off. They ain't mad at me for nothing. I've been ripping folk off. And Zacchaeus said, I'm going to pay them 3 times. I'm going to make things right. I'm going to pay them folk back, get them back their money, plus I'm going to give them 3x. Because I know I ain't been doing right. And Gehazi didn't do that. He tried to keep it and got leprosy. Now here's the lesson. There ain't but 2 lessons I can teach right here. Sometimes God uses dirty water in order to bless you. And so, and you know what the dirty waters represent? Unpleasant situations, trouble, struggle, and stuff that you don't like. It ain't comfortable for you. It ain't comfortable to you. You might have to dip in dirty water in order to get your blessing. checked on Sister Temple when she was over there at Alabama, and they was letting me know what was going on, and they cut open her neck and rearranged some bones. That's muddy water. But she was anesthetized out, laying in the hospital bed. That's muddy water. But she's doing better today. Because sometimes in order to get better, things might have to get worse. Sometimes in order for things to go up, sometimes you got to go down. Sometimes in order for things to get brighter, you got to go through some things. Ain't it the truth what I'm saying? Sometimes you got to dip in muddy waters. I done had my share of being dipped in muddy waters. That's one lesson. So the next time the Lord tell you to do something you don't want to do, that you don't think is pleasant to do it anyway. I tell you, through the storm and through the night, lead me on. What? To the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me. I'm tired and I'm weak and warm. Sometimes you got to be dipped in muddy waters. Ain't that a good lesson? Boy, if I had time, I'd shout right here, because I've been dipped in I had to dip in muddy waters in order to get my blessing. That's one lesson. See, some of you, the problem is you keep avoiding the dirty waters in the Jordan, trying to get the cleaner waters in Damascus. Now, see, some of y'all, women, y'all don't know nothing about this. See, y'all be washing your dishes and washing your clothes and doing all that stuff. See, men, we don't do that. That dish don't need no soap. We ate from that dish yesterday. It ain't that dirty to us. All we gonna do is put a little water on it, scrape a little food off of it, and put some new food right on it. See, some of y'all men, y'all got a wife to help y'all get some things up. But see, I'm not. Listen, plate is just a plate. And if you see us wearing something we wore yesterday, it probably hadn't been washed. Because all we going to do, we're going to put a little smell good stuff, Axe, a little perfume or cologne on it. That's good for us. But I'm just trying to explain to you this. That's one lesson. Let me get this. Be careful the people you ignore God put in your life. That's the second lesson. I had my appreciation Sunday at the other church, and my cousin Sandy. You got to know Sandy. Sandy is loud. Sandy loves attention. But one thing about Sandy, she know the Lord. Can I tell you about Sandy? Sandy, she said I'm her favorite cousin. She one of mine. And she came to my appreciation Sunday. If you've been on Facebook, she the one in the big orange dress. Everybody knows Sandy. Sandy is loud. And she came to my appreciation and she made my day. But let me tell you who Sandy is. I'm not going to get emotional. Sandy is the cousin. About 20 years ago, had an aneurysm. They took her to Baptist in New Albany, but Baptist in New Albany said the aneurysm was so bad, she was beyond help. Transferred her to Baptist East in Memphis. And they had pretty much written her off because the aneurysm was in her brain. And they gave her up for dead. That was 20 years ago. Dirty water. And Sandy survived a brain aneurysm when the doctor said that she wouldn't. And they said if she survived, she wouldn't be able to take care of herself. But Sandy doing good. Started a business, the hardest business, decorating and party planning. That was 20 years. And whenever I want to show enough a prayer answer, I call Sandy. She ain't the richest in the family. She ain't the most successful in the family, but I know she can get a prayer through. I call Sandy and said, Sandy, pray for me. See, you got to be careful who you look over. Now, I got some family members more successful than Sandy, live in better houses than Sandy, but drive better cars than Sandy. But I know one thing, Sandy can't get a prayer through. You better quit looking over folk in your family. And sometimes when you need money, don't ask the person that got money. Them the hard people to get money from. Ask the folk that's struggling in the family. TJ, you know who not to ask in your family. I ain't gonna call no names. Everybody know who to ask. Let's ask the person that's struggling. Them the people that are give the most. Every head bowed and every eye closed. I'm telling you, these are the lessons that I want you to learn. Sometimes God has to send you to dirty waters, a situation that's unpleasant, that you don't like, and you really want to appreciate.